Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for this Achievers webinar. My name is Jess Bell and I'm the news editor at ABB Australia. As we all know, 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year, and it's one that will stand out in history books. But among the many challenges, we've also seen a huge amount of innovation, and HR has been at the forefront of driving those business responses. So at the end of the year, with the Christmas break almost in our grasp, it's a great opportunity to share and discuss what has worked and also what the next 12 months has in store. Mark Barling, Senior Sales Director at Achievers, is going to be the host for today's webinar. So I'll hand over to you, Mark.
Good stuff. Thanks, Jess. HR absolutely is at the crossroads. It's felt like, to be honest, that we've all been at the crossroads this year in one way or another. So how are you looking to respond to the impact of the pandemic? What does your 2021 look like? And how does HR continue its reinforced leadership position as we transition into a post-COVID world? Joining me today to answer these questions are some good colleagues, some good friends, and we'll introduce everyone from left to right. So on the screen, Beverly Stacey, who's the Country HR Manager for ABB Australia. Bev?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Mark.
Good stuff. Thanks very much. Richard Tyler, Senior Insights and Total Rewards Consultant from Western Power. Morning, Richard.
Morning from a very sunny and hot 37-degree Perth.
Indeed, and reconnected to the rest of Australian states over this week. So welcome back over there in Perth, or welcome to us, one of the two, and to Diane Brokenshire in Singapore. Fantastic to have you back on again, Diane. Global HR Head, All Business Lines at Standard Chartered Bank. Welcome.
Thanks, Mark, and it's great to be here and great to be with the panelists. Really looking forward to the discussion today.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Okay, so this year, social distancing, masks, remote working, toilet roll shortages, families have been separated. We've had stranded Australians, Singaporeans, citizens of all countries right around the world. The pandemic of the century has upended societies and economies, and here in APAC, it has been a significant disruptor. Aside from how people have had to respond, businesses have also been forced to innovate and restructure at speeds never before seen in response to fast changing conditions, either within their own company or within the broader country that they operate. A roller coaster, as this image tries to summarise. Some have screamed, some have laughed and enjoyed it, and you've had others that have just been in the background pointing the way forward, hopefully. Now, it's a fair bet the average workplace of 2021 will look significantly different and operate in a significantly different way from its before COVID counterpart, that BC language that we're now starting to adopt. So what are the key trends that have emerged? Well, we've seen work from home and work from anywhere. We've seen focused on people like never before. And I think that's been a real positive out of a lot of organisations that we've spoken to and seen. Actually, there's been a real focus put back onto the people. We've seen organisations now try and bake in that accelerated change. The fact that organisations could change really quickly, organisations are now starting to inculcate that within how they operate. And above all, worker wellbeing and connection are finishing the year as undoubtedly two of the key trends that we'll see continue to be discussed through 2021. So let's talk about those last 2 points. There's our Brady Bunch screens of Zooms that have been very familiar throughout our year. The workplace isn't just where people go to earn a living. It's also an important source of social and emotional connection. Months of social distancing and shutdowns have actually left many workers feeling isolated, and that can spell bad news, or has spelled bad news for morale and productivity. In Australia alone, less than 25% of office workers have returned to the workplace, and we know in Singapore and other parts of Asia that's been similarly affected. And equally, those operating in factories, mines, manufacturing facilities, well, whilst they've been operating under restrictions, what they've had is being together. They've been connected. So the challenge for HR on this point, balance of worker requirement, remains significant. Interestingly, as we've got into the second half of the year, a trend that has emerged for many is that those much loathed from time to time, maybe even dreaded 3 words of going to work, is something that a lot of people crave now. people have become aware of, call it social or intrinsic value of work in their lives. The meaning that an office, co-workers, structure provides them is actually really important. I think has in some respects been reinforced. The other question, of course, is it simply an escape from home? Decades of the split between work and home have reinforcing norms, forcibly undone in not just years, but in fact days, will continue to influence our thinking through 2021. So working from home has evolved through the year. We've now got this situation where working from anywhere is now a strand that organisations and HR departments in particular need to talk about. As office-based companies dare to explore options beyond the one-size-fits-all solution, we can start sharing spaces, I should say, in a new way. Imagine if you could have access to inspiring new locations adapted for different tasks and projects, wherever you are. Can city spaces be reinvented to become multi-tenanted, multifunctional, multi-organisational, supporting work, life, well-being? Or are we asking for utopia? Another real key theme that emerged through all of this was around trust. Trust became a trend without negotiation in the first half of 2020. Ongoing, trust needs to move from forced acceptance to intrinsically endemic. And Mercer's statistics are telling on this particular point. And I think it's at that we'd really like to understand a little bit of insight from our panelists or our guests in this particular instance. And Diane, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. Standard Chartered have recently announced moving to a flexible working. Do you think companies that are announcing this will become beacons for the rest, or do you think there'll be exceptions as we all move into this PC, the post-COVID world?
Thanks, Mark. We have announced a move to flexible working, and we've been very public about it. We've done some press releases, so it is out there that we are doing this. And I'm really excited about it because I think it brings a lot of benefits, both to the organization and to our employees. And this is why I really believe that companies that are moving to flexible working will become more the beacon than the exception. The pandemic really showed that we could be way more flexible than we ever imagined. Standard Chartered is a bank. We have people who do trading, and trading has always traditionally been, you have to be in the office, you have to be here during the office hours, you can't leave. And actually all of our traders worked from home, and it worked absolutely fine. So I think it's really pushed us to think very differently about things, and what wasn't possible before is really possible now. There's a change curve, and you talked about trust and having that trust with employees, and that's something we've been working through, I think, like other firms. How do you build that trust when someone's not sitting right beside you? How do you trust that they are at home and they are working if they don't respond to an email or a message right away? But I think this is all about change, and just changing how you think about work, changing the way that you manage employees, and just getting more comfortable with it. And we are finding, the pandemic's been horrible, but one of the things we found is because this has been extended, we've been going through the change curve, and we've really been seeing some benefits. And so going back to your question about, are we a beacon? Are we going to be an outlier? I think we're going to be a beacon. And some of the reasons, I think, are one, around talent. We surveyed our population, and 88% of our population wants some form of flexibility. It might be location flexibility, it might be time flexibility. So it goes a little bit to what you were saying about the office is going to be adapted. People are looking at different types of flexibility. We are a global population of 90,000 employees across both a retail business, a corporate business, and every function. So I think it's fair to say that we're representative of the global population, and people want flexibility. And so to be competitive and to get the best talent, I think firms that don't offer that may find themselves falling behind and not able to attract talent and also retain their current talent. And in addition, we're going through an exercise right now where we're looking at every single role in the organization. And we're really pushing ourselves and testing ourselves to say, does this role actually need to be attached to an office ever? So, you can think about some IT roles, coding roles, where you could be permanently based from home, and actually you don't need to be in a certain location. So we're going through that exercise right now, and we haven't yet, but we foresee in the future that we'll be posting roles and they won't have a location. It's going to be location flexible. Your offer letter is no longer going to have, this is your main office address. So quite a bit different. And so when we think about skills that are in demand right now, cyber, artificial intelligence, those are going to be highly in demand. And I think that being really flexible like this, you're going to be able to draw from a much larger talent pool than you've been able to in the past. So once again, I think that's a massive benefit that is going to help. And then just a couple of other points I'd make around why I think we'll become beacons. Diversity and inclusion. If you remove the barrier of commuting, because for many people, the actual commute to the office is very difficult and just not possible for them. So if you can say, I'm comfortable that there is no more commuting, then that, again, opens up your talent pool. You have a much broader talent pool to draw from, which is great. And then just going back to your point about, the office being adapted, we are very focused on new ways of working. So we're moving on from the traditional project management, where we're doing our product rollout, the typical product rollout. We're looking much more at the way software firms do the rollouts, adapting agile approaches. And what's great about flexible working is we're adapting our offices, which suits both. So no more offices, much more open space. The office now, we're redefining it to be a place where people are coming to collaborate, to have some social interaction. But it's not a place that you clock in on a Monday and clock out on a Friday. And so I think that's going to help us from a business perspective, because it's helping us to enable how we work. And then finally, there's the cost savings. And that's not the reason why we're doing it, but there's a cost savings, and that's a massive competitive benefit. So I think for all these reasons, I believe we're going to become beacons. I mean, time will tell. We'll see. It'll be great to catch up in a year or two and see where we're at. But I fundamentally think the risks or the things we're outlining, things like the trust, I believe you can work through those. And I just think this is a much better way for employees to engage employees and to provide them with what they need.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really interesting points there, Diane, isn't there? Trust is, I think trust is far easier to establish and maintain within an organisation if they're seeing that in return through how the organisation is adapting to what the office becomes, how they're supported from a home working environment, and how some of the other things, like I've over the last couple of weeks been able to catch up with individual team members. I'm seeing them all for a lunch coming up shortly. It's the ability still to connect that and almost promote that back again, to say it's okay to get back out and do those things. I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and Bev, just as I saw your gorgeous dog walk along in the background of your particular home, as no doubt all did, that extend that question a little bit for yourself and for ABB, and the amazing work that your organisation does in a technical engineering perspective. We are socialised a little bit into this sort of world around, the work is about the economic return in some respects, and that working from home about the economic value, and what does it mean for your job and the value into next year, and how that balance looks, and how does that look for ABB?
How does it look for ABB? It remarkably like Diane. So we had the same sort of numbers, and we haven't spoken before about it. So 89% of our employees said, no, we're happy to work from home. Thanks. Ironically, right before COVID hit, we were about to refurbish all of our offices with these fancy sit-stand desks, and it was all going to be very schmick. That got paused. And then through COVID, our employees remotely redesigned the offices, and now they are socialization spaces. So people come in for a few hours or a day every now and then to socialize, not to work. And we've started trialing that over the last couple of weeks, and it is great. From the economics point of view, we were a company that was I always call them the blue suit, grey hair brigade, engineering. That's who they are. Very against working from home and flexible work. In the space of a few weeks, the trust levels went up. People were highly productive. So we're actually finding people are highly engaged, highly productive working from home. It suits their hours a lot better. And so we're just finding that everything is working at a higher level for us. But we're starting to go the other way now. People are working too hard, too many hours, and we don't have eyes on them we're literally trying to figure out ways to kick them off their computers remotely. So yeah, it's all a balance.
So can I jump in, because Diane, I think your point was on this as well, and Bev, maybe for you, is that, does that then require some additional leader enablement or leader support to actually be able to say, hey, actually you need to help your teams find balance and find this perspective that just because you're working from home and you can, doesn't mean you should?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had to put a lot of training into our leaders on how to lead and engage remotely, how to communicate through a camera. It's hard. You know, we actually employed journalists to help us do that with our leaders so that they could communicate authentically, even down to embracing the fact that there's a dog or a kid in the background and how to react to those issues, you know, so that our employees know that they can embrace it too, and it's okay, it's a part of working from home. But certainly training our leaders on how to connect virtually. It's not a set and forget. You don't bump into people in the office and go, oh, hey, let's have a coffee. You actually have to plan and think these things through and put more effort into it. But it has to be authentic. It can't just be, you know, it can't be this stale way of old-fashioned management.
Yeah, I like that. Again, a theme from Diane at the beginning of what you mentioned, carried through here, that opening of mindsets, that change needs to become more of a constant, and flesh from there. Richard, really keen to hear your point on this, because I know yours will be the lens on how do we provide a reward and insight into your employee behaviour within Western Power. Keen for your thoughts here on this particular question, and what that looks like in making sure that the job has holistic value, not just an extrinsic one.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'd just like to go back to the points made by Diane and Bev. I think from our perspective, Western Power is an organisation of 3,000 plus employees, but we've got separate challenges in that space, Mark. We are not all office-bound workers, and not all of our workers are able to work from home or work remotely or have access to great tech like we do. 1,000 of our employees are line workers, cable jointers, electricians that are out on the job, working on our power lines, risking their lives every day to keep the lights on, if you like. So for those types of workers, remote working is not really an option. So we really have this dynamic where we have the office-based environment absolutely lends itself to enabling us to provide a flexible working arrangement like remote working, etc., which I'll come to in a second. But we cannot distance ourselves from the fact that our operational workforce don't have that option and don't have that ability. So linking and keeping them connected while we are all going off and doing these wonderful remote working is critically important, because they can feel or become separated, if you like, from the organizational culture, where we are trying to make this flexible working arrangement more accessible, if you like. It'll be great if we could send a line worker home and say, hey, log on to your PC and fix the line. But hey, we're not there yet.
They need to be remote anyway, don't they? Just in the execution of their job, especially in Western Australia.
Exactly. And to Bev's point, that brings a different culture, right? There's a different culture in the operational work environment to an office-based environment. You have people that don't want to embrace technology or embrace a new way of working. Even the young folks coming through are a little bit more, you feel they're great on jumping on their phones and getting onto Facebook and Instagram and tweets. But when it comes to remote working, it seems that there's a disconnect there to how they feel their lives can be impacted by that. But just going to your point, we rolled out a 6-month trial now to allow from feedback. We got a lot of feedback from our workforce around whether or not flexible working and remote working was more favorable. Even though we provided that benefit previously, we've always been quite a flexible working environment. And we got a great response back to say, yes, we would like to be more flexible. So we've allowed our workforce now to put in, we're going through a trial period that's been agreed to by executive, where employees can now request to permanently work up to 40% of their time from home. So that's 2 days a week. We've done that because we still believe, to Diane's point, and to Bev's, that the social interaction piece cannot be understated, and people still need to feel connected. And that's one of the biggest learnings I think we've taken from this pandemic, is that, yeah, it's great working from home, and but you do become disconnected if you don't manage it correctly. I'm glad to say, almost 10% of our workforce that are able to work remotely have actually taken up that opportunity. And just one stat for you about the economic impact, Mark, is what we, the call center, classic example. We have, 150 staff within our call center. It's manned 24/7. History dictates that job is you have to come to the office and you have to be in front of your PC at your desk. What that means to people is they're driving into work at 5:30 in the morning and they're leaving at 12:30 at night, and they are putting themselves at risk of, whatever happens at that time of night. So what we found was our customer team said, that's it. Everyone that's on our customer call center is working from home. Productivity went through the roof, because if we needed a customer to get if a customer sends in a call, we didn't have to wait an hour for a specialist person to come into the office, get themselves geared up, get themselves logged in to answer the customer's call. They were at home. They got in their slippers and their dressing gown. They walked into their room that had been set up as a mobile office, and they answered the customer's query within 5 minutes. So our NPS, how you track your how people think about you. I'm not technically your MPC or NPH or whatever.
NPS, yeah.
NPS, that's correct. Went absolutely through the roof. Our employees were happy because they weren't driving in and leaving their kids at home at some ungodly hour of the morning. And it was an absolute win-win. And financially, what a benefit to them. They're not taking public transport. They're not driving to work. They don't have to worry about commuting.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
So a brilliant outcome there.
And I think it talks neatly to what work engagement looks like for 2021 as well, is that there is this blend, isn't there, a hybrid that we're starting to, I think that word hybrid is going to become a key part of our language vernacular moving forward around it. And I love that, as you said, contact centers were one of the first where, and I know for Telstra in particular, this was a really important point where they had, hundreds, if not thousands of people offshore, actually or in different regional locations right around Australia, but the ability to pivot those into a home environment, support them, enabled them to continue to provide fantastic service. Diane and Bev, I'll just bring this question back to you, and then we'll jump back into a little bit of content quickly. But this for you, this maybe not the officers so much, but work engagement. What do those words mean for you for 21 as HR sits here at the crossroads?
Yeah, no, thanks, Mark. And this is something we've been thinking a lot at SCB, because we, going back to this is a change, and we do feel this will engage our employee population, but we want to be really smart about it and make sure that we're it's individualistic to each employee, so make sure that we're doing that individualistically to each employee. But I just want to comment on the office space, because I do think it's both Bev and Richard have mentioned. I think changing the office space is actually a key part of the strategy, because to support this, I think there's that mental shift about the office isn't a place where you're coming in from 9 to 5. There's not a sea of cubicles in front of you, and you have your cubicle where you have your picture of your family and you sit there every day. It's really more about driving that changing way of working to teamwork, collaboration, connection, and learning as well. And so, as Richard said, offices absolutely will not go away, but the role and the purpose changes. And so you become more open plan, fewer offices, if any at all, more meeting rooms, space to whiteboard, brainstorm, and you change the ways of working, which I think also, interestingly for us, has gone to online as well. We're a very global organization, but pre-COVID, virtual collaboration, if you worked on a project within a global group, it'd be a lot of phone calls. And it's interesting now because it is video, but we also have a lot of virtual collaboration tools. And so we're using tools like Mural, Trello, SharePoint, and they're actually allowing us to be much more productive when we're working on team projects. And that's globally, but also it's now locally as well, because you don't have to come into the office if you want to do a brainstorming session. You can actually use these tools to do that. So it's enabling a different way of working and changing, I think, the way that people are thinking about work as well. So, and I think, yeah, and I think work engagement kind of follows the same path, right? You're not coming to the office and sitting beside your manager and your team every day. And so, to understand how we need to think about work engagement in 2021 at SCB, we've mapped out the end-to-end employee journey, and we've been thinking about it as a flexible worker or a global employee, somebody who could be working anywhere at any time, because we are thinking of flexibility in a broad sense. It is where you work, but it also is the hours you work, and could potentially even be the days that you work as well. And we've been really focused on what are those moments that matter. And some things have been talked about, but one thing that's really important is communication. Communication has changed, and I think for everybody in this year of COVID, we've all changed the way we communicate. More communication on a regular basis, shorter communication. As somebody mentioned that, for people leaders, things have changed and communication has changed, where it's much more personal now, I think, than it has been in the past. Well-being is very important now, and I think something a lot of firms are looking at. And one of the things we're thinking about right now is we know that socialization is important, and we know innovation is important. And we know that when you're in the office together, you can bump into somebody, you can be waiting by the elevator, and an idea can spark. And so one of the things that we haven't figured out yet, but we're working on, is how do you recreate those water cooler moments? So we have gone out to our employee population to say, what's the best way for us to do that? And we're actually getting ideas coming in now. So we can certainly circle back on that in a while, once we figure that out, but that's something we're looking at.
And that we look forward to hearing. I might keep going, Diane. I think what we're all looking for is somebody to come up with that virtual water cooler app, just so we can connect and move forward.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Exactly.
Coffee chats for achievers. Coffee chats for achievers.
Thank you, Bev. Love it. Richard, just quickly before we move on.
Just very quickly, sorry, while Diane was talking there, I just had a flashback when I was working for a company called Alcatel-Lucent, which is a global telecommunications company based out of the UK, and I was running a team in Belgium. I flew across to Belgium, and this was probably the the early 2000s. And in Antwerp, we had one of our offices there, and I remember walking in because I had to see the payroll manager. And I walked into his office, and firstly, I couldn't see him because of the smoke. He was a smoker, and he was actually sitting in his office with his door closed, puffing away on his cigarette. That was the first thing that I remember. And secondly, the way in which you talked in those days was very much, master and servant kind of scenario. And so it just struck me while Diane was talking how far we've come in literally 20 years. That was in the early 2000s when smoking was allowed in workplaces. Everyone had their own office or their own cubicle. You were rooted to your desk, and it was a very much you knew your place. So yeah, just how far we've come since then is astonishing.
We have indeed, and I think all of that's been accelerated this year, hasn't it? As I said, we just haven't been able to stand still. We've had to keep moving. And I think to that point, what one of the challenges though that we face, and this is this really key point about us collectively as a community being at the crossroads, is with all of that being done, the words used by you all through this period was connected, connection, collaboration, this social interaction, all of these sorts of things. We're still finding through recent research that Achievers has done that 1 in 3 employees still feel that they haven't been appreciated during the pandemic. This was a global survey that covered off a number of countries, even in our own region. Report also has found direct connection between receiving frequent recognition and employee engagement with those who received formal recognition in the last week or so does shift the needle. And it's really important to I think, focus in on this. So we know that recognition remains an important predictor of engagement. But the more recently an individual received that recognition, the more likely they are to be engaged. So it's not just that doing it once during a year and ticking a box works. It's actually the frequency and the ongoing nature of it. Those that were recognised more frequently, more engaged, compared to only a third, and 16% in fact, who've only been recognised either monthly or annually. So there's a really big drop off, and there's some really interesting work that's been done on this. And Kartik, our marketing manager, has popped up that report for all for all guests, I should say, who are attending today. So I hope you get some really good stuff out of that. Bev, if I can come to you, if you don't mind, on this particular question, the role of employee recognition, this concept of cultural continuity, I think is really, we've honed in on this because an organisation is really good at business continuity planning. And then pretty much around the world in March, we needed to look at cultural continuity planning. Yep. How important is recognition? How important is it going forward, and how?
I'm going to use one different word, authentic recognition, and it's a word I use a lot, but it is the key. It is the actual building blocks of how to bring a community together. what we've done, and then we spend a lot of time, a lot of trial and error, but authentic recognition of our employees in multiple forums, in multiple ways, and never the same thing repeated is absolutely key. So it's really hard for HR professionals. We have to get really inventive and, you know, come up with all sorts of crazy ideas. But, you know, from personal experience within ABB, we started with virtual coffee chats, inviting the entire organisation, and then making sure we recognise different people in there, just saying, hey, thank you for this. Obviously, we used achievers. In the background, we had to put programs in place to start with to encourage different leaders to recognise people for different things. And then it's grown because our leaders have now embraced the good feeling they get from saying thank you to someone and having them react to that in a really positive way. So that's grown. Our employees have always loved saying thank you to each other. They're a bunch of engineers, highly educated, highly skilled, and they love praising each other for their brainy work, and they get a buzz out of that. So I'm lucky in that respect. We didn't have to encourage them too much. You know, if you look at our Achievers platform, it gets bombarded every day with them just going, hey, thanks for all sorts of things. But our leaders have really gotten on board with it. But it really is continuing that authentic thank you. That making sure our leaders take a moment to engage with all employees and be inclusive. So we've had to spend a lot of time too on unconscious bias training and making sure our people understand what it means to belong, embracing differences without singling people out, and having that you know, that, okay, come back to authenticness when you say thank you and engage with people, so they know it's real and that it has a purpose. But yeah, it's been the keys. It's Achievers handed us the keys to the kingdom and we didn't even know it. So,
well, thank you very much for that. We certainly appreciate that. I think yours is an interesting world, isn't it? Because you do have a lot of people who are specialists. Some of the biggest experts in their field globally in this, and the opportunity to be still appreciated, still called out, and just that intrinsic thanks from their leader or leaders around them has obviously resonated during this year.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Richard, a quick grab, if you don't mind, just on that from yours, given the difference in worker profile or employee workforce profile across yours, where you have a white collar and such a significant and equally a specialised, don't get me wrong, I'd hate to be on one of those high tension power lines trying to fix one of those at the dead of night.
Me too.
Indeed. Cultural continuity for Western Power and the role of recognition and making sure that people are appreciated. Just a quick grab.
Just very quickly, I just want to re-highlight what Bev said. Authentic recognition is the key. It needs to be authentic. It needs to be real. We actually found that, you know, since introducing our recognition program called Livewires, no pun intended, you know, it's actually formed a bridge, funnily enough, between our operational and office-based workforces. And in fact, the biggest recognition month on month is in our operational environment and our operational work streams, where people jump online at 8:30 at night. They've just got home off a hard day on the tools, and they pop onto the Achievers platform and they say, hey, you know, Rick or Madison, cheers, thanks for a great job today, well done on the lines in Kalgoorlie, you know, and that recognition, that social bridging, as we like to call it, you know, is great, because then we have, you know, our executive of operations jumps onto that recognition and goes, hey guys, just heard about this great outcome for a customer or whatever. Just on that as well, though, something that we've also found is that through the recognition and enablement of recognition, you get people really coming up with some fantastic ideas themselves. And we always look to embrace, you know, really authentic idea setting. And one of my colleagues in HR overheard an employee saying, wouldn't it be great after the year that we've had, wouldn't it be great that we were in some way empowered, not as a manager to provide PowerPoints, which is our recognition currency. Wouldn't it be great if I could just give, you know, 5 or 10 points to a colleague of mine that I know has been going through a hard time this year, and, you know, just to say, hey, you know, we're with you and we understand. And that idea was brought back into HR. And what we ended up with doing is actually creating an entirely new recognition category, actually, called, it's a season of giving. And we allocated every employee in the entire organization 5 PowerPoints, which is essentially $5, so a cup of coffee. And we've said on the 14th of this month, which is on Monday, just before Christmas and before everyone rushes off on holidays, every employee go for your life. You can give that $5 to anyone in the organization that you believe is deserving. And we've had such a great response from the executive, from our head of HR, and saying that's just capped off a really shitty year with something that everyone can just go away and feel a little bit more special about. So, recognition is such an important key to unlocking people's mental psyche. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and there's power in that, isn't it? That it doesn't need to be much. It needs to be a moment of appreciation, that moment of recognition, literally in all facets of the word. I'm going to skip this next question, and I'll land here just from a time perspective, because I'm keen to for any panelists, any guests, I should say, that are on. Don't hesitate to send through your own questions. But Diane, if I can, I'll start with you if you don't mind, and we'll run through the panel. Your final word today. We stand, I think all departments stand at a bit of a crossroads, but HR in particular, given, I think, a critical proactive role that we as a community can take. Your final word for our guests today, on what you've learned and what advice you'd offer to take forward.
Yeah. So, I think what I've learned from 2020 is that the current situation can change in a minute. Your life can be altered before your eyes and you don't always control it. But I think what's been very cool about watching 2020 is, as humans, we are so resilient and agile. And so I think it's really important for people to get focused on what's important for them in their lives. Work is work, but life is a destination. Life's not a destination, it's a journey. And every second counts. So really make sure you're spending your time on things that matter most to you. And because we are so resilient and agile, take chances and make changes. Life isn't a dress rehearsal. It is the real deal. What we have is right here, right now. So enjoy what you do and just don't wait for tomorrow, because you don't know what tomorrow's going to look like.
Yeah, it's a good point. That I like both of those. One is be focused. So concentrate on the stuff that matters. But in doing so, don't hesitate to take a risk or two, because you know what? It can pay off. And in particular, if it's something like, as Richard's just talked about, this little kernel of an idea that can then not transform, but can add to the transformation where you continue to be a driver of change. Neat. Okay, fantastic. Bev, to you, if you don't mind, in what's been an amazing year for ABB, including not joint ventures, I should say, and various other things, as well as expansion. Your final word for today for our guests.
I couldn't agree with Diane more. Like the ability, we've just got hit with everything this year, and I think all companies, have really shown their resilience and their ability to change and pivot very quickly. And I think now, as HR professionals or even leaders in businesses, now is the opportunity to really take that forward as a way of work, that ability to pivot quickly and try new things. All of a sudden, we have talent that has opened up to us, not just within Australia, but globally. We've got people now working in the Northern Territory, engineers who are doing design work that we would never even considered employing. Mums are returning to work, who are, who now can structure their workday around their kids. They can work later at night. So we've got access to talent that was previously imagined that wasn't available to us. So embrace that. And then the other thing is be prepared to do weird and wacky things that may fail. And I'm a big fan of that, but this year has really opened the door for me to try a lot of wacky things and have my peers go, okay. And a lot of it's worked, some of it's failed. And in that failure, your employees can actually go, oh, I can do the same. And we've had some amazing innovations because we as leaders have tried to give something a crack out of desperation to try and engage and promote engagement. I think now is, don't lose that. Don't lose everything we've learned this year about embracing change and doing things differently. Just, keep running with it. Don't stop.
Can I, you're right about taking risks. As I reflect on our 4 o'clock choir practice karaoke sessions that occur at Achievers now on a regular basis, they're still considered a risk, and we're not 100% sure whether we should keep them as a disservice to anyone who's got ears. But that question about, because all three of you have talked about this access to talent. Just a quick one, and then Richard, I'll swing to you to finish. How are you best harnessing that? How are you taking advantage of that opportunity? Because whilst we've all got access to the talent, it's another thing to be able to bring it in. So for you, Bev, what does that look like at ABB so far?
Yeah, it started with employees during COVID wanting to move to where their parents were so they could look after them. And our response was, okay, off you go. We'll see you when COVID's over and you can come back to work. And then we realized, oh, okay, who cares if you're in Cairns? Like, it really makes no difference that you can't drive into a New South Wales office. And then it occurred to us, there are a lot of people out there, I can see Richard laughing because, we have the same talent pool of engineers and whatnot. And they all happen to be out in WA and Northern Territory. We have hired specialist recruiters and talent personnel to go looking for these people and start talking to people in these areas to go find talent that's hiding out in regional Australia.
Nice. One of the questions that's just popped up as well, Bev, then as well, I'll stay with you for just this moment, is actually the learnings when onboarding new talent virtually. Yeah, lots of learnings. It's really horrible, but I was really lucky. I had to onboard our country head of marketing communications, who'd never met an ABB person through the interview process or onboarding. Mm-hmm. So she actually went, this is horrible, and I'm going to redesign it from a communications perspective. So I happen to be the luckiest HR person on the planet. Like, shit just lines up for me. It's hard, but you have to make an effort to make sure that there's virtual link ups, you have a buddy. If you can get somebody to meet them somewhere face to face, take them for a lunch and something like that, do it. But if you can't, it's that constant virtual thing. We do a lot of things. We have a radio show in-house, we have coffee catch-ups. We do a lot of social things virtually, and we make sure those people are bombarded with that so they start making friends and having that connection. Okay. Nothing beats the face-to-face coffee, though, got to tell you. If you can arrange that, you're onto a winner. Indeed. Richard, I'm just going to swing on to the summary slide. Beverly, Richard, and Diane have been fantastic to leave some points behind. So I'll just have these up here. Richard, one of the other questions that's pinged in around employee development, given that most of the communication has been virtual, and in your world, of course, you've got people that are not just working from home, but working remotely on a line somewhere. Just a few quick thoughts on that employee development piece from yours, especially that insight lens, I'm sure would be interesting here, and how you've continued with it.
Yeah, so firstly, I just on a quick note around the closing remarks from the other panelists. I think as good as this year has been for innovation and for thinking wacky thoughts and thinking outside the square and having great, idea generation that's come through employees to say, hey, we can live differently, we can work differently, we can work remotely, etc. I think what we've learned at Western Power in any case as well is absolutely looking after our employee welfare. And during this pandemic, we've witnessed, unfortunately, some decline in mental health and other mental health issues, which have led us to think really, really seriously about the support that we provide to our workforce, and even broader than that, to their family and extended families that have really, have had a tough year. So as much as we relish the opportunity as professionals to challenge ourselves and think outside the square, we have to sometimes also bring our feet back to ground. And say, this is actually a human issue, right? And this year has reset us, if you like, as a species, as a being, as an interconnective network across a global stage. And people's mental health cannot be taken for granted in that fact. So That is a learning we've taken away, and we're looking to strengthen our EAPs, for example, in regards to how we support people with very different mental health issues that we might have seen, before the pandemic. Separation anxiety, for example, has skyrocketed, where people have said goodbye to loved ones and they just simply don't know when they're going to see them again because the borders are closed. So
the borders were closed,
in regards, so just as a wrap up,
actually, so Rich, I was going to say I might just, if you don't mind, just draw that there, because funnily enough, it does help answer one of the other questions that's been logged by David in terms of just health and safety obligations. And I think for all of us, that understanding that for a lot of employees, they have done this very hard. One bedroom apartment, single people, disconnected from workers, and it's different in Australia as it is to Diane in Singapore, isn't it? So I'm just going to draw it to a close there, if you don't mind, given the time. What I will say is, on behalf of Achievers and all of the participants or guests who were with us today, thank you so much to Richard, Beverly and Diane. Thank you for your time, your insight, and for those questions that we haven't quite got to the depth of answer that we want to. What we'll do is we'll make sure that from Achievers, we will respond to all of our guests with some answers on it. To the three of you, thank you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas for the year to come, and we look forward to a bright and shiny 2021. Thanks very much. Back to you, Jess.
Thanks, Mark.
Huge thank you to you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and to all the speakers. As you say, your insight shows what an unforgettable year it's been, and 2021 is certainly going to be an exciting time for the industry too. So the recorded link to this webinar will be sent out to everyone after the event. So on behalf of HRD, I want to say a huge thank you to Mark and our speakers, and wish you all a well-deserved break over the Christmas holidays.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Merry Christmas.